Hi, I'm Colin Shantz with Copper Tree Solutions, and today we're going to talk about to cloud or not to cloud. Should we go to the cloud or should we stay on premise? That's the question that I keep hearing as I talk to various different organizations, whether it's clients or whether it's prospects. And the question or the answer is it depends. There's situations where it makes sense to go to the cloud, and there's situations where it makes sense to stay on premise. And a lot of organizations and a lot of business people don't really know exactly what the cloud is. They keep hearing about it. You probably read about it, and maybe you hear that organizations in general are moving to the cloud. You might see some statistics that say the vast majority of organizations are going to the cloud. And so people ask us, what should we be doing? Is there something that we should be taking advantage of? Does it make sense for our organization? I hear that it's good. I don't really know what it means, but maybe it's something we should be looking at. And really, at the end of the day, the cloud is just another computer. It's a computer in somebody else's data center rather than a computer in your server room. So we help our clients make the transition and figure out what makes sense for them. Sometimes when there's an infrastructure that's due for a refresh, it's usually a good time to look at whether it makes sense to go to the cloud or not. If there's a way to move applications to a cloud hosted application, that often makes a lot of sense. But sometimes it's still being on prem is still the best solution. There's multiple ways to go to the cloud. You can move everything to the cloud in a truly cloud environment. Some organizations will do hybrid cloud. I think most organizations, whether they know it or not, are already leveraging some cloud solutions. And in a lot of cases, one of the things that has gone to the cloud pretty early on, and often cases quite a while ago, was website hosting and email. If you ask most organizations whether they host their website in-house, most of them will tell you no, they work with a website host. And technically that is the cloud, and they're already leveraging that today and probably just don't realize it. One of the benefits of the cloud is that it allows organizations to scale. So if you're ramping up your organization, maybe you're adding people, maybe you're adding different applications. The cloud will give you a lot of flexibility in how you do that, and you're always paying for what you use. You're not paying for a massive server that'll be underutilized and sit in your server room. So there's a lot of benefits that go with cloud computing. CopperTree is at a point now where we lead with the cloud. If it makes sense to go to the cloud, sometimes there's reasons not to. Whenever our default position is that we're going to move to the cloud unless there's a reason not to. So we look at a bunch of things when we're making that determination. Sometimes there's legacy applications that require on-prem servers, or maybe there's some very resource intensive applications that are just more cost effective to run on-prem. When you look at the overall numbers, typically the costs are about the same when you look at the extended life cycle. If you look at about a 8 to 10 year life cycle, the hardware on premise will need to be replaced every 5 years. If you run your servers in the cloud, you can run them for the length of the operating system before you have to touch them again. So there's a lot of benefits there, and it gives you that flexibility. It gives you that fixed monthly cost rather than the big upfront cost. You can spread it out over a longer period. There's some organizations that are somewhat more likely to have their infrastructure on premise. We work with some manufacturing organizations that tend to have large data sets that they're working with. Maybe they're doing design or drawings and things like that. And they also tend to have a lot of equipment that's dependent on accessing their information. So if the entire plant is dependent on having access to their systems, sometimes the decision is made to keep the infrastructure on premise rather than having it out on the internet and relying on the internet connection. And that's also somewhat dependent on what kind of internet connection is available. If there's some really good redundant options, then that can open the door to doing more cloud at that point. Many of our clients have either limited or no internal IT expertise. And so they rely on somebody like Coppertree to show them what's available and make good recommendations on their infrastructure. So one of the things we do when we work with them on a quarterly basis as we're doing our strategic planning and as we're working with them to understand their business and understand their strategy and support that through technology is they're relying on us to give them good IT recommendations. So we'll be looking at the infrastructure. If they have an on-premise infrastructure, typically at the 5-year mark when it's time to do a refresh, one of the things we look at is whether it makes sense to go to the cloud. And in a lot of cases in the last number of years, it has made sense to do that. And we have a lot of organizations that have made that transition. And whenever possible, we lead with the cloud. Because we find that I think it's the way of the future, but it also gives our clients more options from a connectivity perspective, from a remote working perspective, and from a disaster recovery perspective. So we tend to lead with that. And then sometimes there's instances where it just doesn't make sense, where there's maybe large data sets or maybe there's complicated applications that they're using that require that on-premise infrastructure. But ultimately, our clients are relying on us to understand their business needs and to make good recommendations and help them get to where they're trying to go. Involving IT in the business planning and strategy allows our clients to leverage some of the new technologies that are available. And ultimately, when you look at the organizations that are being successful today, it's organizations that have found ways to leverage tools, whether it's technology or whatever it might be. It's organizations that have found ways to leverage tools to drive efficiencies and improve communication and streamline their processes within their organization. So part of the Coppertree strategic planning process is really understanding the business. Our VCIO will be part of the strategic planning at our various clients. They'll sometimes be part of the board meetings, depending on how the organization is structured. And it's really about including IT and IT having a seat at the table when you're talking about the future of your organization. I'm Colin Shantz with Coppertree Solutions. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about the cloud. To learn more about our organization, you can visit us at our website, coppertreesolutions.ca.